Okay, so for the audience who don't know the whole situation about the benefits, for European people, we kind of take the health insurance, all that stuff for granted, but it's a very, very expensive luxury, and there's different levels of health insurance, life insurance, and having full benefits, and they also give you a very, very good retirement pay after you serve.
If you stayed in for 20 years, you would have a retirement.
20 years. So 20 years is actually, for a regular job, it's not that many years. And you get a very, very good retirement pay, full benefits, which is what I'm saying in America, this is the job for A-law musicians, and when it comes to euphonium, it's the job. And in my opinion, from what I know, and to where my knowledge goes, is the best paid full-time job in the world.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah. So, yeah, continue with your story.
Well, when it was a fantastic opportunity, and I was able to travel the world. In the Air Force, I had visited 49 of the 50 U.S. states and probably 7 or 8 countries, something like that. And then after the fact, then I got to go to Alaska, which was the 50th state, and then with some other groups, namely, mostly Boston Brass, I've been now to 30-some countries. But we've sort of jumped ahead. So I was in the Air Force Band, and I was starting to understand more about myself and knew that I have an entrepreneurial bent. And to do something because someone said so, I wasn't a very good follower. And that's a pretty big mandatory thing if you're in the military band. And I got the inkling that maybe I didn't want to stay there. And so that was a difficult decision because, as you said, you know, that's sort of, here I was 24 years old and I won the job, and I have the number one job that I always wanted. And I was striving for this goal and the goal was the thing rather than a complete understanding of what that meant. And so I achieved the goal before I understood what the job was.
Okay. Were you the youngest? First of all, I'm almost positive that you're the youngest euphonium player to ever win an Air Force job.
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not.
I think I've done a little bit of research, so
really?
I couldn't find anyone younger, but I might be wrong. So if anyone knows, correct me.
It's a good question.
Have you seen any younger people in the band? So by the time you won the audition, you're 24. So I just got 25. So you're like my age, and you won this big job. Were you the youngest person in the whole band? Because I assume usually it doesn't go that way. Usually they look for somebody with a lot of experience, with a lot of recommendations, So
it's a good question. I've never really thought about it that way. I guess I must have been at the younger end of the group, and I'm not sure. I think when I won it, I probably was actually even 23, maybe 22, 23, something like that. So
were you already graduated from? Have you already?
I got a degree, a music education degree, and I was halfway through a master's. So I never completed the master's.
Okay, so you just won the job and go like.
Job, and I went right in. Yep. And the folks at Akron were really understanding and great about it. I was the band graduate assistant. They were really, I mean, it was the training that I had at Michigan State and the University of Akron laid the groundwork for me. So it was really a great opportunity. It's funny, and I never really thought about the age thing before. And maybe that's true. I don't have any idea. It's not unprecedented, you know, in the music world. You know, you look at somebody, Carol Yonch won the position at the Philadelphia Orchestra very, very young, and that still happens, but it's not very common.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's true.
More an exception.
Well, that's a good point. And it probably played into the fact that I had some of the frustrations that I had because I was a 20-year-old and I thought I had the cat by the tail, and I thought I knew everything, and I thought that I knew what I was going to do. And so it was a real leap of faith when I left.
And which year was that?
1998.
1991.
Were you born then? What year were you born?
1991. I was born.
Okay, good. So,
7 years old.
Yeah,
that's when
perfect.
I started playing euphonium.
There you go. That's why I did it, because I knew somewhere in Lithuania there's a young man who's taking up the euphonium. So I was really, I knew I had a little bit of runway before I was going to have to take off. There's an Air Force analogy there. Sorry. And so I immersed myself in business and entrepreneurship. One of my best friends is Patrick Sheridan, phenomenal tuba soloist, conductor, arranger, writer, you name it.
Breathing Jim.
Breathing Jim, that's right, and Brass Jim and all that stuff.
I just made a video giving some on Breathing Jim.
Oh, you did? Oh, well.
I said that I also mentioned that you actually like it.
I do, yeah. I'm an advocate. I'm a fan. So Pat left the Marine Band. He and I were in the military at the same time. And he got out of the Marine Band and went and got an MBA from the University of Michigan, which I just knew I wasn't going to do. And it was remarkable that he did that, and it's paid huge dividends for him. But I was going to have to do it myself. And so I read everything I could read and subscribed to whatever magazines and listened to whatever cassette tapes, because this is back in the Stone Age. And I read every book that I could find about small business and about incorporation and about marketing and about, just all of it. And then I also spent, I don't even know, dozens of hours on the phone with Sam Palafian and with Pat and other friends who would talk to me about, well, what goes into making a thing like this. And also, at the same time, we had a brass quartet in the Air Force that there was an Air Force version and a civilian version. The Air Force version was called Top Brass and the civilian version was called Nothing But Valves. And so we were trying to make a run at doing more things with that group. So that kind of gave me some experience working with a chamber group, played in tuba euphonium quartets, and then I also had the opportunity to play with the brass band of Battle Creek. Because that group played only at Christmas time and in May, actually one of my dear friends, Chris Matten, played bass trombone. He and I were from the Air Force Band, and we would go to Battle Creek and play with that group for 3 or 4 years.
I kind of let you slip away a little bit with the quitting part.
Oh.
So you said you were not really into following stuff, and that's kind of, a very kind of diplomatic way and the right way. So there must have been something that you didn't like. So I assume, from what I'm aware, in the military band, especially Air Force, there's playing part and there's other things you have to do which have nothing to do with music, and there's some sort of routines.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on who the boss is at the time, and a lot of it has to do with the environment in the country at the time and whether the country is adding military personnel or drawing personnel down. And so there's lots and lots and lots of factors. And some euphonium player in some military band in Washington, D.C. is not unimportant, but is not the most important thing by a big stretch. And so you're a cog in a machine, and you're there to do a specific job. And one of my other friends and mentors, a guy named Roger Barron, who's a kind of controversial, has been a controversial figure to some in the euphonium world. He speaks his mind, and he was always very, very helpful and direct and honest to me. And I would be complaining about something to him that was going on in the band, and he was in the Navy band at the time, and he would say, go look in your contract and look for the clause where it said that you are entitled musical satisfaction. And that's not a part of it. They don't
like that thing when you.
No, it was for me. Yeah, it was and it was a painful lesson for me. But the military bands have a very clear mission and a very clear job, and that's what's got to happen. And so that structure has to happen the way that it does. And so when you have somebody who's a little bit of a live wire and who's a little bit of a knucklehead, or has sort of a propensity for saying jokes or making fun of things, then it goes counter to the mission of the group. And then anytime you're in an organization, there's conflict. Some people, and actually, to be honest and direct, some people, and not just in the military band, but in any organization, you find some people who are in leadership roles because they are fantastic, and they're great leaders, and they're amazing. We'll keep it with music. They are phenomenal at their instrument. They're some of the best musicians, and they also happen to be really great people and leaders. And there are other people who are really good at working the politics of it, and they advance and they may or may not be a good person or a nice person, but they know how to do all of that stuff. And I don't really I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut around those people.
So just to let you guys know what that means in regular language, Lance says that he doesn't like politics and which is pretty much, we're kind of similar on the same thing, because I tend to, and for those who follow me, that's one of the things I want to put material on this channel to actually show the way it is, and I'm as honest as it comes. And if I'm and there's no right or wrong answers, because there's always two sides. What I'm trying to do is just show, that there's multiple approaches, everything. So Lance is one of those people who he has his own approach, and even though he kind of won the dream job and etc., that didn't necessarily mean it was the dream job for him. It
was the only job that I knew was a full-time euphonium playing job, and I wanted that job before I understood that I had to do. There were other responsibilities for having that job, and then I had all these ideas I wanted to explore with chamber music and soloing and writing and arranging and doing all this other stuff.
Nobody gave a shit about.
Well, at times, there were opportunities to explore those areas, and then at times there weren't. And the problem was I wanted to explore them more fully, and that wasn't in line with where the military band was going. So really, it was as simple as that. I was unhappy for sure, and there were people that frustrated me, and there were situations that frustrated me. But largely, in every instance where I've quit, it became clear to me that the direction that the organization was going ceased to be the direction that I was going in. And for a while, we were going in the same direction. And then there's one thing that the Air Force Band, the Brass Band of Battle Creek, Nothing But Valves, Boston Brass, River City Brass Band have in common. And that was me. And they didn't really, of course they changed, but those things were, I was the only common denominator in all those situations. So I can say they're jerks and 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 I'm the king of the world. Or I can say there's something about me that was out of alignment with that opportunity at that time.
That's one of the things about you. You don't always, this is a guy who don't point fingers as well. And it's my approach as well. Even sometimes it is a case where it might not be your fault and somebody else is running things not necessarily in a good way, but you always have to start by looking at yourself. If you cannot fit in, and if you're blaming somebody, you're always in a shitty spot because it's a bad feeling, bad environment. And if you're going to a job every single day for 20 years and you're frustrated, it's kind of...
That's right.
And with music, it's one of those things. When the joy is out, it becomes a nightmare.
Yeah. I felt like a cog in a machine. I felt like I was no different than, and actually there's a study that showed that orchestral players, study's a bit old now, but same level of job satisfaction for line workers in a factory. I felt like that, where I was just here to do this really specific task at a very high level over and over again, and I could do that, but it wasn't rewarding for me.
Okay, and so like whenever you play in any other groups, the thing with you are obviously one of the guys, especially in America. Obviously in Europe, before I even came to America, which I met you in 2014, honestly I didn't know who were you, and I knew nothing about you. So, but you're one of the guys, and you probably get treated like the guy. Did you notice, because in the military band it's different. I assume every single player is super, super high level.
Yeah.
And it's they have very strict traditions, and it's hard to sell off competition. And did you ever felt that treatment, somebody treated, because the stereotypes for euphonium players, we're always kind of a little bit, I'm not saying that is the case, but sometimes when you're in larger groups, you're pushed aside, because the role of euphonium in most of the bands, except for brass bands, is not that important as, and that is true, unless you disagree.
Well, in wind bands, it depends, and I haven't followed wind band repertoire as closely as I did when I was in it, but the euphonium is a key role with so much of the wind band repertoire coming, the original wind band repertoire coming out of orchestral transcriptions. The euphonium took on the role of the cello, and so there were really great lines in all of these transcriptions. And then because of that, the music that was written through the 20th century, the original works for band, really relied on the euphonium quite a bit. So not only brass band, but wind band as well. Now that sort of, in my experience, that started to taper off through the 90s, and there are some composers who still kind of understand its role. But a lot of times, if a composer thinks of it as a supplement to the low brass, they're missing an opportunity. And if they see it as an additional solo voice or in a way to accompany in duet with clarinet or trumpet or one of the other voices, there's huge opportunities there. So we were, and yeah, I think we had I had no complaints with our parts most of the time. Yeah.
Okay, so this is pretty much going to be the summary for the first part of the video, so we're gonna continue. So make sure to subscribe, like, follow, all that good stuff, and we'll follow up with the second part of the video.